I came to buy a used car today. After years of saving, the day finally arrived when I could afford a small vehicle for my needs. Walking in the cold was getting difficult, and getting to the doctor was becoming a chore. I put on my cleanest flannel shirt, my old but polished boots, and my least worn jeans. This showroom, it's gleaming. The smell of new leather and the air of importance from the well-dressed people hang heavy. I walked in and sat down near the coffee machine, hoping someone would notice me. But the 5 salespeople over by their desks are deep in conversation. Not one has even glanced my way. I keep offering a small smile to each one who passes, but no one returns it. I'm just sitting here like a stone, as if I'm invisible. 40 minutes. It's been 40 minutes, and still no one has spoken to me. They're ignoring me as if I were a ghost. My age and simple clothes probably make me seem unimportant to them. Finally, a young receptionist with flawless nails and perfectly styled hair approached me. Her brow was furrowed. "This area is for customers only, sir," she said, emphasizing customers as if I didn't belong. "I'm here to buy a car," I said softly, my old hands resting on my knees. She looked me up and down, taking in my plain attire and aged appearance. "Then someone will help you eventually," she replied, her tone dismissive. Her attitude spoke volumes about how little she valued me as a potential buyer. Waiting here, my gaze fell upon my pocket, where my old wallet rests. Inside is a faded photograph, me and my old unit, with our commander, Major Thomas Dent. The photo is worn at the edges, from how many times I've looked at it. It's a reminder of a time when I mattered. In Vietnam, in the Army Signal Corps, I maintained communications in the toughest situations, when lives depended on a clear transmission. Now, retired, I live in a small house on the edge of town, fixing radios in my garage and volunteering 3 days a week at the local VFW, helping younger veterans navigate the maze of benefits they've earned. No one's asking about my story here. No one's offered me water. No one cares. I sit here quietly, my calloused hands folded in my lap, like soldiers often do when the world forgets their sacrifice. Back in that office, visible through the glass partition, 3 salesmen are gathered around a desk, occasionally glancing my way and chuckling amongst themselves. "That guy's been sitting there forever," one said, adjusting his silk tie. "Probably just looking for free coffee and a warm place to sit." Another, younger but just as dismissive, joked, "You think he even has a driver's license anymore? Bet he can't see past the hood ornament." The receptionist rolled her eyes as she joined their circle. "He's probably just here to get out of the sun. We get these types sometimes. They wander in looking lost, then leave when they realize no one's giving out handouts." Out in the service bay, a young salesman named Greg is watching the scene through the showroom windows. Something about it doesn't sit right with him. A discomfort he can't quite name is settling in his chest. "Are you sure he's not here to buy a car?" Greg asked when he came inside for a clipboard. "He's been waiting a long time." The sales manager replied with a condescending smirk. "Trust me, I've been doing this for 20 years. You don't make commission off charity cases. He's not worth your time." I'm still waiting in my corner seat. I took out a small, worn notebook from my breast pocket. I began sketching quietly. It's an old habit from the war, when waiting was as much a part of service as action. In its pages are precise diagrams of antenna positions, call signs written in a steady hand. A quote from my commander is boxed in a corner. No voice unheard, no signal lost. Suddenly, the ambient noise of the showroom, the murmur of sales pitches, the ringing phones, the coffee machine's burble, all faded to silence. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside, its polished surface reflecting the midday sun. Out stepped a man in a perfectly tailored suit, confident, commanding, with a military posture that no amount of civilian life could erase. Major Thomas Dent, now a retired colonel and successful businessman, whose company supplied communications equipment to half the eastern seaboard. He walked in, his presence immediately filling the room. He scanned the faces before him, until his gaze settled on me. "Sergeant Howard Kent," his voice boomed, carrying the authority of a man accustomed to being heard the first time. Heads turned, salesmen froze mid-conversation, the receptionist's fingers halted over her keyboard. "You're a hard man to find, Dent," he said, striding across the floor and embracing me like a brother. The receptionist stammered, You know him?" Dent turned, his eyes hardening. "Know him? This man saved my life twice. Once with his radio when our position was about to be overrun, and once by dragging me half a mile with a bullet in his shoulder." The manager stepped forward, suddenly attentive. "Sir, we had no idea that—" Dent cut him off. "That's precisely the problem. If you've ever seen someone misjudged by appearances—" Colonel Dent turned to face the general manager, who had emerged from his office at the commotion. "Is this how you treat your veterans?" he asked, his voice quiet, but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut steel. "We didn't know he was a veteran," the manager mumbled, adjusting his tie nervously. "But you didn't ask either, did you?" Dent replied, his gaze unwavering. "You saw an old man in modest clothes and decided his story wasn't worth knowing." The showroom remained silent, the air heavy with collective shame and the sudden realization that they had badly misjudged the situation. Dent pulled out his phone and made one call, speaking in terse, efficient phrases that everyone strained to hear but couldn't quite catch. 15 minutes later, while Dent and I caught up over coffee that the receptionist had hurriedly provided, 2 men in expensive suits entered. They carried leather portfolios and spoke briefly but intensely with the general manager, whose face gradually drained of color as the conversation progressed. When they finished, Dent stood and addressed the now gathered staff. "For those wondering what just happened, I've purchased a majority stake in this dealership," he announced. "Effective immediately, I'm the primary owner." The staff gasped collectively. The sales manager's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor, the sound punctuating the shock that filled the room. "First order of business," Dent continued, his voice carrying the same authority it had in combat zones. "Howard gets any car on this lot. No payments, no paperwork. It's the least we can do for a man who kept countless soldiers alive with his communication skills." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Second, everyone here gets retrained in how to treat customers, all customers, with dignity and respect, or they get replaced. Starting today." Dent turned to me, his tone softening. "Pick your ride, Sergeant. Whatever speaks to you." I blinked, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "I just came for something reliable to get to my appointments, nothing fancy." "Then you'll get the most reliable vehicle on this lot," Dent replied. "That's an order, Sergeant." Greg, the young salesman who had questioned his colleagues earlier, stepped forward from the crowd. "Sir, if it's all right with everyone, I'd be honored to help Mr. Kent find exactly what he needs." My weathered face crinkled into a smile. "Then let's do it together, son." As we walked toward the used car section, whispers spread through the remaining staff. By evening, the story had escaped the confines of the dealership. Veteran ignored at dealership. Former commander returns and buys the place. Veterans groups reposted it. Military family pages shared it. The story trended nationwide, tapping into a collective sense that some debts can never be fully repaid, but must always be acknowledged. That evening, as the sun set, Dent and I stood outside the lot, watching as workers installed a new sign above the entrance. Kent and Dent Motors, built on brotherhood. "Never thought I'd be in business," I said quietly. "Neither did I," Dent replied. "But some partnerships are forged for life." The next morning, I returned to the dealership, driving a brand new truck with an understated American flag decal on the back window. I parked in the same spot I had been dropped off the day before, walked through the same door, but this time Every employee stood and greeted me with genuine respect. Greg approached me with a steaming cup, cream and one sugar, right? I asked around about how you take your coffee. I chuckled, my eyes crinkling at the corners. Someone's been paying attention. The receptionist, now reassigned as a trainee in customer relations, nodded silently from her new desk, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and newfound understanding. At the end of the day, as I prepared to leave, I passed by a group of customers. One young man in a faded military jacket stopped me. "Sir, I saw the story online. Thank you for everything you did back then and yesterday." I just nodded, my hand briefly touching the younger veteran's shoulder. "No voice unheard," I said softly. That phrase later appeared on the wall behind the reception desk in bold bronze letters that caught the morning light. The dealership became known throughout the region as a place where veterans were treated with special care, not because of policy, but because of a lesson learned the hard way about judging worth by appearance. I still find it all a bit surreal. Dent and I, running a car dealership. It's not something either of us ever imagined, but it feels right. He calls me every few days, checking in, not just on the business, but on me. He wants to make sure I'm comfortable, that I have everything I need. It's more than just gratitude. It's a bond that time and circumstance can't break. The staff, they're different now. They're actually listening to people, asking questions, trying to understand their needs instead of making assumptions. It's a slow process, but it's happening. Sometimes I sit in my office, looking out at the lot, and I see the faces of the customers. I see the young families, the elderly couples, the veterans, and I remember that day. I remember the feeling of being invisible, of being dismissed without a second thought. And then I remember Dent's voice, that booming voice that cut through the silence and changed everything. It wasn't just about buying a dealership, it was about saying, "I see you. I value you. Your story matters." That's what we try to do here now. We try to listen. We try to understand. We try to treat everyone with the dignity and respect they deserve, regardless of how they're dressed or how much money they have. It's not always easy. Old habits die hard, and sometimes you have to remind people. But we keep trying. We have a weekly meeting where we talk about customer service, not just about making sales. We share stories, both good and bad, and we try to learn from them. Greg, he's become a good friend. He's got a real heart for people, and he's a quick learner. He's the one who suggested putting the quote on the wall, "No voice unheard." He said it should be a constant reminder of why we're here. And it is. Every morning, when I walk in and see those words, I remember that day. And I remember Dent, and I remember why we're doing this. It's not just about selling cars. It's about building a community where everyone feels seen and heard. The other day, a young woman came in. She was looking for a car for her mother, who was recovering from surgery. She was nervous, overwhelmed by the process. I sat down with her, not as a car salesman, but as someone who's been through a lot, someone who understands that sometimes you just need someone to listen. We talked about her mother, her recovery, the things that were important to her. Then we talked about cars. We found a safe, reliable vehicle that fit her mother's needs and her budget. When she drove away, she had tears in her eyes, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. That's the kind of moment that makes it all worthwhile. It's not about the money, it's about making a difference in someone's life, even in a small way. We get a lot of veterans here now. They know we understand. They know they'll be treated with respect. Sometimes they just come in to talk, to share their stories, and we listen. We offer them coffee, a comfortable chair, and a listening ear. We connect them with resources if they need help. It's not always easy,